All right, so as most of you know, I'm Bob Busfield. I'm president of the Woodworkers Guild. This is my home here in the Beauchene community here on the North Shore. I'm originally from New Jersey, and in 1989 I was relocated to Louisiana with the company. I had a home in Destrehan, and that's where I started to do more woodworking. But I was very limited in the equipment I had. I moved here in about 2007, and when my wife wanted to move into Beauchene, I said, well, I had more ideas of moving out to the country and building a large shop, but she wanted to be here. We are golfers, so it kind of makes sense. And I told her that either I have to take over the garage or we have to be able to expand. And ultimately what we did was we did expand part of the house and do some other work to incorporate my shop. My great claim as a woodworker is that after moving here, I built a wooden lake skiff. The hull was built at the Madisonville Maritime Museum. They used to have boat building classes underneath the museum, so I decided to enroll in that. I like woodworking. I've always liked boats. I'd like to do more fishing, so I decided I'll build the boat, and that'll get me going on what I wanted to do. So again, I finished the entire hull at the museum, including the painting externally and internally. All the framing was done there. And ultimately, I brought it home and finished all the decking, floorboards, console, electronics, whatever I needed. Interestingly, about maybe 150 of these boats have been started at the museum, and they claim that after people take them away or take them home to finish them, maybe only 30 to 40 have ever been finished. So, but this is one of them. So you can take a look at the boat. All the decks in here are made out of sinker cypress that I got out in Maurepas. The hull is plywood. The deck boards are all Spanish cedar, and the console, deck, and floorboards were all built here, as I said. Okay. All right. Okay, so as I just mentioned, we decided to put a little addition on the house. So this addition here is is my shop. We also enclosed this entry area here and built a porch so that we had easy access. This is actually my side door to the house. But we'll take a walk inside and get a look at the shop. So this is my shop, and originally this area from about here to the wall was a storage area. It had a set of double doors on that one end as well as the other end. So from about here over, I expanded out. As I said, we redid the entryway here and went to a single door into the shop. I really like this concept because many mornings I get up and I can just walk into my shop. I'm not walking out back or through the rain or whatever. I can just come into my shop, and usually in the morning I'm doing quiet work in here. I'll either be drafting or setting up to do whatever I plan to do that day. The single door that's on the shop is actually an exterior door, and it has the weather stripping around it, which when I'm in here and doing anything that might be dusty, although I try to collect as much of the dust as I can, but that keeps dust from migrating into the house. The shop has no heating or air conditioning, but when I built it, we insulated the walls very well, put extra insulation in the ceiling, and during the course of the year, it maintains within a few degrees what the rest of the house is. I think during the recent freeze, when we got down into the teens, the temperature in here dropped to about 60 degrees. And a little bit cold for me with my hands, but I can still come in here for a while and work and go in the house and get warmed up if I need to. In the summer, it gets a little warm, but I have the fans, and I've found that most times keeps me comfortable in here. When I built the shop, I painted the floor, the walls, the ceilings. I wanted everything as bright as it could be, and I had outlets installed high up on the walls. I wish I had done more that way. The ones that are down low are kind of difficult to get to with the equipment. The other thing I had them do was add fluorescent lighting in here. I thought 5 lights were going to be enough. I think I could have used a few more. One thing I'm doing is as the light bulbs burn out, I've been replacing them with LED bulbs, and that has tremendously helped on increasing the light that's in the shop. So if you're ever thinking of doing better lighting in your shop, LED is the way to go. And I get the brightest lumens and the highest heat color that they make for this type of fixture. When I first built the room, I thought I had a lot of space. First thing I did was I put this bench in, and I had a tool board that has kind of followed me all the way from New Jersey, a single tool board. When I grew up as a kid, my dad always had tools hanging out in the open, and we knew where to go and grab whatever we needed. And I'm kind of a visual guy. I like to see what I need, and the things I use all the time are probably on this first board. I have another tool board here, and through the years I've kind of expanded and added, things for chisels, planes, whatever I need. The other thing I find is that every horizontal surface tends to accumulate stuff. So, again, through the years, if I had clamps piling up, ultimately I built a clamp rack so that gets all the clamps in one spot and not cluttering up my work surface. I've also tried to build drawers, storage, and I figured build the drawers shallow and a lot of them so that as you add stuff, you can open the drawer and see it. It's not buried within the drawers. So I've done that through the years. And I've kind of gotten accustomed to where most things are, but sometimes there's things I know I have trouble finding them. And the other problem I have is that sometimes when I'm looking for something, I find something that I could have used 2 weeks ago. I forgot I had. So I think at some point I'm going to have to wind up cataloging more of what I have in the shop. So again, tool boards. I also made a lot of shelving for fasteners, tape, some minor electrical and plumbing stuff. Like Mel, you always have nuts and bolts left over. These are just accumulations of things I've either taken apart or the leftover nuts and bolts from whatever I'm doing. But quite often I can come in here and find exactly what I need without having to run to the store. basic grinder. This was a Craftsman binder. It's only 6-inch diameter. I kind of wish I had the 8-inch, and it had a wide base on it, so I had to kind of modify it to adapt the Wolverine sharpening system for when I'm doing turning work and resharpening my tools. But I've been able to adapt it, and it works fine. My saw is basically a shopsmith system. I guess I bought this in 2003, right after I retired. Up to that point, I had a very small table saw that was kind of a contractor's saw. It was a Rockwell Delta I bought from my uncle, along with a drill press. And I was going to do a lot of work to try and expand the surface and get set up with that saw. But I happened to be walking through Lowe's one day, and they were demonstrating the shopsmith. And when I was in New Jersey, I had a good friend that had bought one, and he highly recommended it. So that day, I wound up buying the shopsmith setup, and they threw in a bandsaw as well if you purchase that weekend. There are things I like about it. There are things I don't like about it. If I had a large shop, I probably would have by now converted to a cabinet, regular woodworking cabinet saw. But I've learned to live with this. I've used it for 18 years. Probably made tens of thousands of cuts on this thing, so I've gotten very used to it. The things I like is that I can not only use the saw, but I can also set up a sanding system using the same drive with the dust collection. So I do a lot of sanding with a 12-inch disc. As I say, it came with a bandsaw. That was the first bandsaw I ever had, and I've used that extensively through the years. About 3 or 4 years ago, I inherited the Delta bandsaw. My brother passed away. I think he passed away before he even had it totally assembled. And my nieces told me, just take it. So I took the bandsaw. It came with a set of legs. Anything in here I can move around and reposition to do whatever I need to do. What I like about this saw is it has a bit more features than the shopsmith bandsaw. I can change blades a lot quicker, so I tend to use this for smaller cuts and smaller radius cuts. I still leave that bandsaw set up. In fact, I recently used that to resaw some oak that I made the curved piece at church for a framework for stained glass window. Okay, so everything in shops, I think typically in small shops, there's a lot of things are on wheels. They have to be moved around. Over here, I've got a couple of sanders behind the dust collector, which is movable. And these two I can lift out of here. They're on separate plates that if I had to, I can lift them out, clamp them to a bench if that's what I need. But typically I have found these are adequate where they're at. My joiner, my planer, and some other things every now and then I need to do long boards. So everything is made where I can pick it up and wheel it out. And what I do is two of the wheels on the side are fixed, and the two casters in the back are also fixed. And so what I do is I'm able to wheel it out. If I had to turn it, I can, but I wheel it out, set it down. That way, the wheels are perpendicular to the feet of the material, so that it'll never move on me. And the front two wheels again are fixed. So when I need it, I can pull it out. Same thing with the planer. I can pull that out And I've run a lot of the boards I used in the boat were all put through this planer. I have a router that I made. It was kind of a cheap router. Not really happy with it, but I don't really do a lot of routing. So I use it when I have to, and I buy the bit for whatever I need. I bought a whole set of bits, and I think I've used 3 or 4 different bits out of the whole box. I just don't get into a lot of routing, but mostly a lot of roundovers and things of that nature. Everything I have is set up for dust collection when I'm running equipment in here. What I've done is what I find convenient. I do have a shop vac that I'll use periodically, and I've put 2 lengths of hose together, and that way I can pretty much get all the way down to whatever equipment I need to get to and hook that up when I'm doing sanding, the joiner, the planer, and even the router, as well as I use it for shop cleanup as well. This is my drill press. This is one of the items I got from my uncle before I left New Jersey. I bought the drill press, the table saw, and the joiner from him for like $200. This is a Japanese drill press, a Yuasa. It's an excellent drill press, top quality. And what I liked, didn't realize it at the time, was he bought a German-made keyless chuck. This is back in the probably 70s. And this chuck alone is probably worth $100. And it's so nice not to have to always be keying your drills in there. I know you guys have talked about all your fancy dust collection at your drill press. We saw it at Tom's shop. I have a very simple system. Here, I'll demonstrate it for you. It's gone. Works for me. And if I ever have to, if I do get into something, I've made various jigs or things where I can just as easily hook up the shop vac. I can clamp this on any way I need to clamp it or set it up to where I can get the suction I need to pull dust away. All right, so this is my workbench. I built this some years ago. I wanted a heavy-duty workbench. I bought the top. It was on sale, so I bought that. And the rest of it is 8-quarter oak framing. Actually, the legs are cypress, but everything is mortise and tenon together. And it's made a very good, solid workbench for me. When I grew up as a kid, the equipment we had was very basic, but my dad had a what I call a jigsaw. There's scroll saws, but I think this is more of a jigsaw. So I've had this. We used this a lot when I was a kid. It's simple. It's kind of safe for children to use, as long as they understand. Comes with a washing machine motor. Basically goes up and down. And a little as it works, it puffs out air to keep your surface clear of sawdust. And of course, the aluminum beer can light reflector is priceless. Probably one of the reasons I still keep it. This is my cutoff saw, sliding compound miter. Not the greatest setup. If I'm doing big material, I'll set up either my roller, screwed in other stuff to try and handle how I cut material. And this originally I had a very inexpensive, made in China, kind of crude cutoff saw, sliding compound. I used it for making decks several decks. But it was not very good for making good, precise cuts. When a couple of years ago, a gentleman in the sanctuary decided he was going to shut his shop down. He was getting up in age, and he wanted to sell his equipment off. This is one of the good things of being in the Woodworkers Guild, is that he called the guild and said, "I'd like to offer my equipment first to guys that do woodworking." So I went there on the day we had set up for our members to go. I saw this saw. I asked him, "What do you want for that saw?" And he said, "Well, give me $50." And again, it's one of the advantages, I think, of being in the guild. Along with that, he gave me saw blades, any number of other things. And he was financially well off, so he just wanted to see his equipment go to the other woodworkers. I think Pat Roberts also got a Delta bandsaw from him that day, as well as guys purchased other stuff. This is my scroll saw. I have not done very much scroll sawing. I actually got this saw from Dick Gann when he passed away. Needs a little bit of work to get it set up, but I'm working on trying to get a little bit more into that. My lathe is a Grizzly lathe. This too I got for nothing. A fella said, "Hey, I've got a lathe. I don't use it. I don't want it. If you want it, just take it." So I did. It had been out in an outside storage shed. It was pretty heavily rusted. So I brought it home, cleaned everything up, and this is now where I do the bulk of my turning. It's a lot heavier duty than the Shopsmith, and I want to get more and more into things with this. I did raise it up a little bit on wood, so it's a better height for me as I'm a little tall. And that also helped to really stabilize it, where before it was kind of a little wobbly for me with the floor, but I've managed to get it up and shimmed correctly. Recently I had two problems. One is I wasn't getting the speed out of it, and I found out that the shivs inside, that the lubrication over time became actually very sticky. I don't know if that was from the accumulation of dust from within in the headstock. Just that and old oil, I guess, or grease that got very old. So I was able to basically clean that in place. I thought I was going to have to take it apart to clean it up. I was able to clean it with WD-40 and some rags and running it back and forth through there. So I got the speed up. The other problem I recently discovered is when I was making the Christmas ornaments I talked about a month or two ago as in show and tell. To do that, you use a pen mandrel. And I found out that the headstock and the tailstock are not perfectly aligned. If you come in a little bit, Tom, you can kind of see that when you're here. So what this meant is I had to basically bend this slightly to get the tailstock to go into the end. And that means it's flexing every time it goes through rotation. So my next project here is to take I think what I have to do is take the headstock off and do a little machining on the keyways here to be able to rotate the headstock. The tailstock and headstock are perfectly point to point when I put them together, which is one of the primary checks you always should do when you're purchasing a lathe, is to make sure that this point and that point meet each other. And they do. They line up very good when they're close. But as I move the tailstock out, as you can see, because it's it's not perfectly in this plane, you start getting separation as I'm going away. So I'll get that redone with some machining. That's my next project. I managed to get all these things made, but in reality, it bothers me that I had to flex this a lot to be able to do that. This corner here has become the Wooden Boat Festival corner. Everything I collect lumber from time to time. A lot of stuff I've already collected and probably cut to size to make cabins or whatever. I've actually got a lot of stuff made, boxes of components. I probably have a lot of components that haven't been assembled, because when I make stuff, I make it by the thousands. And if I take 1,000 finished pieces to the Wooden Boat Festival, I probably have enough to make another 1,000 components for the next year. So a lot of stuff piled up. In this corner, I have a metalworking lathe. This was my dad's. And when he passed away and we cleaned the house out, I thought, well, I'll take it. Being a mechanical engineer, I thought I'd get a little bit into metalworking. In all reality, I haven't done anything with it, and I'll probably look to sell this in the next year or so. My dad always worked. He was, at the time, at one point, he made did all the machining to make a little steam engine. I was thinking I could get this running on compressed air for a demonstration, but I haven't gotten to that yet. So we were kids, we grew up, we were always into hobbies, radio controlled boats, radio controlled planes, railroad outlets, railroad layouts, all kinds of things that we used to do. And so a lot of that I've also collected. This is supposed to be my hobby table, but it's accumulated too many things, and I need to get that all cleared out. All right, so I have the Tom Gustafson filter, and I like to run this sometimes if I'm in here doing some sanding work, even sanding work at my bench, I'll use this. I do have the overhead filter, but I usually run that when I'm not in the shop. If I've done a lot of work in here, I'll run that. It probably needs to be cleaned, but that does help as well. What I like about this is when I'm sanding on the lathe, I kind of just set it on my chair, start it up. Most of the dust that comes off the back of what I'm sanding here does wind up on the filter. And in fact, occasionally I vacuum that filter and then reuse it. It works pretty good. The only other thing is I said I have a drafting table. Everything I do drawings first of whatever I'm going to do. It helps me a lot. I tried to get into the computer system, but I haven't quite succeeded doing that. And I've had the drafting machine for years, and this is what I worked off of in my early career as an engineer, so I can pretty much get through whatever I need to draft and design. And I don't do big stuff anymore, just small. Biggest is maybe 11 by 17. So that's about it for the shop. As I said, everything is made to be mobile. I can set up. The problem is I take a lot of time probably to do the setups. And I guess the other issue for me is I accumulate too many things. I go in too many directions. I like woodworking, I like boats, everything nautical. I play golf, I do service work for my church, I work out my church. So I go in too many directions, and everything, I'm always accumulating something to help me with whatever I'm working on. So I probably have way too much stuff in here, and I need to do a lot more cleanup and clean out, but But it's worked for me. I've been in this shop now for probably 12 years, and I've actually managed to make quite a few things over those 12 years. So I enjoy what I do. That's about it. Thank you for being here.